Fern had always prided herself on being the most professional wedding planner in 3 counties, which wasn't saying much since one of those counties was basically just a gas station and a Dairy Queen. But still, she took her job seriously, very seriously. So seriously that she had 17 different color-coded binders for each wedding, labeled everything in her apartment, including a sticky note on her toothbrush that said, "Dental Hygiene Implement Number 1, and had never, not once, fallen for a client. Until Tommy walked into her office wearing a tuxedo that was clearly 3 sizes too big and a look of pure panic. "I need help," he announced, stumbling over the doormat that clearly read "Wipe your feet" in large, friendly letters. "That's why people come to wedding planners," Fern replied, watching as Tommy somehow managed to get tangled in the ribbon display. "Are you the groom?" "What? No." "Well, yes. Sort of. It's complicated." Fern's eye twitched. She hated complicated. Complicated meant deviation from her 17 binders. Complicated how? Tommy finally freed himself from the ribbons, looking like he'd lost a fight with a craft store. "I'm getting married to someone I've never met. Tomorrow, and I just found out an hour ago." "That's not complicated," Fern said, consulting her emergency protocols binder. "That's insane. My grandmother arranged it." Tommy continued, now somehow wrapped in tulle. "Apparently, she's been corresponding with this woman's grandmother for months. They decided we'd be perfect for each other because we both like dogs." "Do you like dogs?" "I'm allergic to dogs." Fern stared at him. Then she started laughing. Not her professional, tinkling laugh that she used with difficult mothers of the bride, but a genuine, snorting laugh that made her sound like a congested walrus. "This isn't funny," Tommy protested, but he was trying not to smile. "It's hilarious," Fern gasped between laughs. "You're getting married tomorrow to a stranger because your grandmother thinks you both enjoy creatures that make you sneeze. When you put it like that, it gets worse. I bet she doesn't even like dogs either." Tommy paused in his tulle untangling efforts. "You think so?" "I guarantee it. Grandmothers are notorious for their creative interpretations of compatibility. My grandmother once tried to set me up with a guy because we both enjoyed breathing." "Did you marry him?" "He turned out to be a mouth breather. Deal breaker." And just like that, they were both laughing like idiots in a room full of wedding paraphernalia, which should have been their first warning sign. "Okay," Fern said, suddenly all business again. "What's her name?" "Divine something. I wasn't really paying attention after the arranged marriage part." Fern's fingers flew over her keyboard. "Divine Hartwell? That sounds right." "Oh no." "What oh no? That's a bad oh no?" Voice. Fern was staring at her computer screen in horror. "I know her. She's my nemesis." "Your nemesis? What is this, a comic book?" "Every wedding planner has a nemesis," Fern explained seriously. "Divine Hartwell is mine. She's a freelance wedding disaster coordinator." "That's not a real job." "It is if you're her. She shows up at perfectly planned weddings and somehow everything goes wrong. Last month, she attended the Peterson wedding and the cake spontaneously caught fire." "Fire, Tommy? Cake doesn't just catch fire." Tommy was quiet for a moment. Maybe it was the alcohol in the filling? "It was a dry cake, no alcohol, just chaos and Divine Hartwell." "So you're saying I shouldn't marry her?" "I'm saying if you marry her, your wedding will probably end with the church collapsing into a sinkhole. But the alternative is explaining to my grandmother that I'm backing out of an arranged marriage she spent months planning." Fern shuddered. Angry grandmothers are terrifying. "Exactly. So will you help me?" "Help you what? Marry my nemesis?" "Help me figure out how to get through one wedding without disaster. After that, we can get a quiet divorce and blame incompatibility." Fern considered this. On one hand, it meant working with Divine Hartwell. On the other hand, it was a professional challenge, and Fern loved professional challenges almost as much as she loved her label maker. "Fine," she said, "but I'm charging you triple." "Deal." They shook hands, and Fern felt a little spark when their fingers touched. She told herself it was static electricity from the tool. The next morning, Fern found herself doing something she'd never done before, deliberately seeking out Divine Hartwell. She tracked her down to a coffee shop called The Grind, which seemed appropriate since being around Divine always felt like slow torture. Divine was easy to spot. She was the one sitting in the corner booth, surrounded by what appeared to be the contents of an entire craft store, muttering to herself while aggressively bedazzling something that might once have been a napkin. "Divine," Fern said, approaching cautiously, like one might approach a rabid squirrel. Divine looked up, and Fern was struck by two things. First, that Divine had really pretty eyes, and second, that those pretty eyes were currently filled with the kind of panic usually reserved for people who just realized they were about to be eaten by a bear. "Fern Morrison," Divine said, her voice strangled. "What are you doing here? Did you come to gloat?" "Gloat about what?" "About me getting married, to someone I've never met, tomorrow, while having no idea how to plan a wedding because apparently I'm cursed." Fern blinked. "You don't know how to plan weddings?" "Of course I don't know how to plan weddings. I'm a freelance photographer. The wedding disasters just happen around me. I thought everyone knew that." "You're a photographer?" "Yes, I take pictures of the disasters after they happen. Insurance companies love me." Fern sat down heavily in the opposite booth. "So you're not a wedding disaster coordinator? That's not even a real job." "That's what Tommy said." "Tommy, you know Tommy? He hired me to help him get through marrying you without everything exploding." Devine stared at her. "He hired you to help him marry me?" "Yes." "The same me you think is your nemesis?" "Yes." "This is insane." "That's what I told him." They sat in silence for a moment, contemplating the absurdity of their situation. Finally, Devine spoke. "Want to see the napkin I've been bedazzling for 3 hours?" "Why are you bedazzling a napkin?" "I panicked. I don't know what I'm supposed to do." I've been to exactly one wedding in my life, and it ended with the bride getting arrested for public indecency. "What did she do?" "Nothing. Her dress just disintegrated during the vows. Apparently the seamstress used water-soluble thread as a prank." Fern winced. "That's terrible." "I got some great shots, though." Despite herself, Fern smiled. "Can I see them?" Divine pulled out her camera, and for the next hour, they looked through her portfolio of wedding disasters. Divine's photography was actually incredible. She had a talent for capturing beauty in chaos, finding the human moments in the midst of catastrophe. "These are amazing," Fern said, genuinely impressed. "Thanks," Divine said, blushing slightly. "I know they're weird, but I love capturing the real moments, you know? Even when everything's falling apart." "Especially when everything's falling apart," Fern corrected. "These show more genuine emotion than most traditional wedding photos." "You really think so?" "I know so. I've seen thousands of wedding photos, and these are—" Fern paused, looking at a shot of a bride, laughing as her veil was carried away by a runaway peacock. "These are honest." Divine beamed, and Fern felt that static electricity feeling again. "Definitely tool-related," she told herself firmly. "Okay," Fern said, pulling out her emergency planning notebook, a smaller, more portable version of her regular planning binders. "We can do this. I'll handle the wedding planning, you handle not causing disasters." "I don't cause them on purpose." "I know that now, but just to be safe, maybe don't touch anything important tomorrow." "Define important." "Anything that could explode, collapse, catch fire, or spontaneously develop sentience." "That's very specific." "I've learned to be prepared for unusual circumstances." They spent the rest of the morning planning Tommy and Divine's wedding, which felt surreal for multiple reasons. Fern found herself actually enjoying Divine's company, which was confusing because she'd spent 2 years considering her the bane of her professional existence. "So," Divine said as they debated flower arrangements, "what's Tommy like?" "Disaster-prone, apparently. When I met him yesterday, he got tangled in my ribbon display." "Ribbon doesn't just tangle itself around people." "That's what I thought, but he managed it somehow." "Maybe we're perfect for each other after all," Divine mused. "Two people who attract chaos. Or maybe you'll create some kind of disaster feedback loop and accidentally tear a hole in the space-time continuum. That would make for some interesting photos." Fern snorted with laughter, then immediately tried to cover it up with a cough. She was not supposed to be enjoying this. The evening before the wedding, Fern was doing her final venue walkthrough when she ran into Tommy, who was standing in the middle of the church, looking like he might throw up. "Second thoughts?" she asked. "Third and fourth thoughts," he replied. "Maybe fifth. I've lost count." "About marrying Divine?" "About everything. This whole situation is crazy, Fern. I'm about to marry someone I've had exactly one conversation with, and that conversation was mostly about napkin bedazzling." "You've talked to her?" "We met for coffee this afternoon. Divine seemed nice, really nice actually, which somehow makes this worse." "Why does that make it worse?" Tommy ran his hands through his hair. "Because now I feel guilty about planning to divorce her. She's this sweet, talented person who's just as confused about this whole thing as I am. And I'm plotting to marry her and then immediately abandon her. You could always try actually being married to her. Right, because arranged marriages work out so well. Some do, Fern said quietly. Do they really? My grandparents had an arranged marriage. They were married for 63 years. Were they happy? Fern considered this. They seemed to be. Gran always said love was something you built, not something that just happened to you. That's very wise. Gran was full of wisdom. Most of it involved proper cake storage techniques, but still. Tommy laughed, and Fern realized she was going to miss him after tomorrow, which was weird because she barely knew him. Fern, Tommy said. Yeah? Thank you for helping with all this. I know it's been weird, working with your nemesis and all. She's not really my nemesis, Fern admitted. I just thought she was. What is she then? Fern thought about Divine's photographs, her genuine panic about the wedding, the way she'd laughed when Fern made a joke about the peacock picture. I think she might be a friend, Fern said, surprising herself. That's nice, Tommy said. Everyone needs friends. What about you? What do you think about Divine? Tommy was quiet for a long moment. I think, he said finally, that I might be in trouble. What kind of trouble? The kind where you start caring about someone you're supposed to temporarily marry. Oh, thought Fern, oh no. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, which Fern took as a good omen. She arrived at the church at 6 a.m., armed with her emergency kit, backup emergency kit, and emergency backup emergency kit. Divine was already there, sitting in the front pew with her camera, looking pale but determined. How are you feeling? Fern asked. Like I might throw up, but in a hopeful way, Divine replied. Is that a thing? Optimistic nausea? Sure. Good, because that's exactly what this is. Fern sat down beside her. Everything's going to be fine. I've planned this wedding with military precision. What if something goes wrong anyway? Then we'll handle it, together. Divine smiled at her, and Fern felt that stupid static electricity feeling again. She really needed to talk to someone about the tool situation in her office. Fern, Divine said. Yeah? After today? When Tongi and I get divorced and this whole weird situation is over, do you think we could still be friends? I'd like that, Fern said, and meant it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the morning light filter through the stained glass windows. It was peaceful, calm. Nothing was on fire or collapsing or being carried away by wildlife. Fern should have known it wouldn't last. At precisely 10 a.m., the church doors burst open and 3 people rushed in, all talking at once. There's been a terrible mistake, announced an elderly woman in a lavender hat. The whole thing's off, declared an elderly woman in a pink hat. Someone's going to get sued, added a third person, who turned out to be Jen, Tommy's lawyer cousin, looking harried and clutching a briefcase. Fern and Divine exchanged glances. Let me guess, Fern said. The grandmothers? Confirmed Jen. And they are not happy. The lavender-hatted grandmother, who introduced herself as Lisbeth, Tommy's grandmother, was waving a piece of paper around like a battle flag. I've just discovered that this woman, she pointed dramatically at the pink-hatted grandmother, has been lying to me for months. I have not been lying, protested Pink Hat, who was apparently Divine's grandmother, Rosa. I was creatively interpreting. You told me Divine loved dogs. She does love dogs. She's allergic to dogs. She loves them from a distance. That's not the same thing. It's a very reasonable compromise. Fern watched this exchange with growing fascination. It was like watching a tennis match played with accusations and passive-aggressive commentary. What else did you creatively interpret? Lisbeth demanded. Rosa consulted a small notebook. Well, you said Tommy enjoyed outdoor activities, so I assumed that meant Divine would too. Tommy's idea of outdoor activities is checking the mailbox. Divine's idea of outdoor activities is photographing other people doing outdoor activities. That's not participating, that's documenting. Documentation is a very important skill. Jen stepped forward, clearly trying to take control of the situation. Ladies, perhaps we could discuss this calmly? Calm? Both grandmothers shouted in unison. Jen took a step back. There's more, Rosa continued, consulting her notebook again. You said Tommy was good with his hands. He is. He's a massage therapist. You said he worked in healthcare. Massage therapy is healthcare. I thought he was a doctor. I never said he was a doctor. You said he helped people feel better. He does help people feel better. Devine looked at Fern. Is this really happening? I think our grandmothers have been running a con on each other for months, Fern whispered back. My grandmother isn't even my grandmother, Devine whispered. She's my great aunt. My actual grandmother died when I was 12. Why didn't you tell her that? Have you tried correcting an elderly woman who's determined to see you married? It's terrifying. Meanwhile, the argument had escalated, and Lisbeth continued. You told me Devine was a successful wedding professional. She is. She's a photographer who accidentally ruins weddings. She doesn't accidentally ruin them. She documents their natural tendency toward chaos. That's the same thing. Tommy chose this moment to arrive, took one look at the scene, and immediately tried to back out of the church. Unfortunately, he backed directly into the holy water font, which overflowed dramatically across the marble floor. Sorry, he called out, slipping and sliding as he tried to mop up the water with his jacket. I'll just fix this somehow. Devine immediately started taking pictures. Are you documenting this? Fern asked. It's what I do, Devine said, snapping away. Besides, look at the light on the water. It's beautiful. And it was. Somehow, Devine was capturing something magical in what should have been a moment of pure chaos. Enough! Bellowed a voice from the back of the church. Everyone turned to see a small, ancient woman in a wheelchair being pushed by a middle-aged man in overalls. Great-grandmother Agatha? Tommy said weakly. That's right, young man, and I have something to say to all of you. Great-grandmother Agatha wheeled herself to the front of the church with the kind of authority that made everyone else automatically step aside. Lisbeth, Rosa, sit down and shut up. Both grandmothers sat down and shut up. Now then, Great-grandmother Agatha continued, I've been listening to this nonsense for the past 10 minutes, and I'm here to set the record straight. She pulled out a thick folder from the bag in her lap. This entire arrangement was my idea. What? Tommy and Devine said in unison. I orchestrated the whole thing. Lisbeth and Rosa think they've been corresponding independently, but I've been feeding them information about each other's grandchildren for months. But why? Tommy asked. Because, Great-grandmother Agatha said, at 97 years old, I've learned to recognize certain things. And I recognized that both of you were lonely, stubborn, and too scared to do anything about it. She opened the folder and pulled out photographs. Tommy, here's a picture of you from your cousin's wedding last year. Look at your face. Tommy looked. In the photo, he was standing alone at the edge of the dance floor, watching couples dance, with an expression of profound loneliness. And Devine, here's you at the same wedding. Devine's photo showed her behind her camera, but her face was visible in the reflection of a mirror in the background. She had the exact same expression as Tommy. You were both at the same wedding, Great-grandmother Agatha continued, standing 20 feet apart, both too shy to talk to anyone, both wishing you had someone to dance with. You were there? Tommy asked Devine. I was working, Devine said softly. I remember seeing you. You looked sad. I was sad. I thought about asking you to dance, but you were too scared, finished Great-grandmother Agatha, both of you. So I decided to give you a little push. A push? Fern interjected. You arranged a fake marriage. It got results, didn't it? Look at you all. Tommy, you've spent the past 2 days thinking about someone other than yourself. Devine, you've been planning something other than your next photography job. And you, Fern? Great-grandmother Agatha's sharp eyes fixed on Fern. Hey, you've discovered that your so-called nemesis is actually a lovely person you have a lot in common with. Fern felt her cheeks burn. I was just being professional. Uh-huh, and I suppose all that laughing I heard yesterday was purely professional laughter. You were spying on us? I was having coffee. You were being loud. Jen cleared her throat. So, legally speaking, what happens now? Is this marriage legitimate? Of course it's legitimate, Great-grandmother Agatha said. I may be sneaky, but I'm not a criminal. All the paperwork is real. So Tommy and Devine are actually getting married today? Fern asked. If they want to, Great-grandmother Agatha said. The question is, do they want to? Everyone turned to look at Tommy and Devine, who were staring at each other with a mixture of confusion, panic, and something that might have been hope. Tommy started, then stopped. Devine tried, then also stopped. They stood there in the middle of the church, surrounded by overflowing holy water. interfering relatives, and the weight of a decision that had seemed simple yesterday and now felt impossibly complicated. "Can we have a moment?" Divine asked. "To talk? Privately?" "Of course," Fern said, though she found herself oddly reluctant to leave them alone. "We'll just wait outside." Quote, "All of us," great-grandmother Agatha added firmly, giving the two grandmothers a look that brooked no argument. As the family members filed out, Fern lingered for a moment. "Whatever you decide," she told Tommy, "it's going to be okay." Fern looked around the church, at the spilled holy water catching the morning light, at Divine's camera capturing beauty and chaos, at Tommy's jacket draped over a pew where he'd abandoned it after his cleaning attempts. "Because," she said, "you're both good people who care about each other. That's not nothing." She left them alone in the church and went to join the others on the front steps, where she was immediately cornered by great-grandmother Agatha. "So," the old woman said, "what do you think they'll decide?" "I don't know," Fern admitted. "They barely know each other. Sometimes that's an advantage. No preconceived notions. And sometimes it's terrifying. The best things usually are." Fern considered this. Through the church windows, she could see Tommy and Divine sitting in the front pew, talking intently. They looked like they belonged together somehow. "Great-grandmother Agatha?" Fern said. "Yes, dear. When you were planning all this, did you consider what would happen if they actually fell in love?" The old woman smiled. "What do you think I was hoping for?" "So," Tommy said, "this is weird." "Super weird," Divine agreed. "Good weird or bad weird?" "I'm not sure yet." They sat in silence for a moment, both staring at the altar, where in about an hour, they were supposed to either get married or not get married. "Can I ask you something?" Divine said. "Sure." "Yesterday, when you hired Fern to help you get through marrying me, were you planning to divorce me immediately after?" Tommy winced. "That was the plan. Yeah, I'm sorry. That sounds terrible when you say it out loud." "It doesn't sound terrible. It sounds sensible. I was thinking the same thing." "You were?" "Tommy, we're strangers who got thrown into this situation by scheming relatives. Of course we were both planning exit strategies." "Were?" Divine looked at him. "Were you planning to divorce me? Past tense? Because I'll be honest, after spending yesterday planning this wedding with Fern and having coffee with you and listening to your great-grandmother's story, I'm not sure what I'm planning anymore." Tommy felt something loosen in his chest. "Me either. This is crazy. Completely insane." "We could just do it," Divine said suddenly. "Do what?" "Get married. For real. Not as some temporary arrangement, but as an adventure." Tommy stared at her. "You want to marry me?" "I want to try being married to you. There's a difference." "What kind of difference?" Divine thought for a moment. "Marriage with an escape clause feels like giving up before we start. Marriage as an adventure feels like, I don't know, like we're brave enough to see what happens. What if we're completely incompatible? Then we'll find out together. What if we're not dead? Then we'll find that out together too." Tommy looked around the church, at the morning light streaming through the stained glass, at the evidence of their chaotic morning, at Divine's camera sitting on the pew beside her. "If we do this," he said, "I mean really do this, there are things you should know about me." "Like what?" "I'm messy. I leave dishes in the sink, and I never remember to put the cap back on the toothpaste. I watch terrible reality TV shows, and I cry during commercials with dogs in them, even though I'm allergic to dogs. I'm scared of commitment, and I have no idea how to be a good husband." "Okay," Divine said. "My turn. I'm weird about food. I eat cereal for dinner, and I put hot sauce on everything. I take pictures of things at inappropriate times, like when people are crying or when buildings are falling down. I talk to myself when I'm working, and I have strong opinions about lighting that most people find annoying. I've never had a relationship last longer than 6 months because I get scared and run away." They looked at each other. "So we're both disasters," Tommy said. "Complete disasters," Divine agreed. "Want to be disasters together?" "Yeah," Divine said, smiling. "I really do." When Tommy and Divine emerged from the church holding hands, the assembled crowd, which had mysteriously grown to include several neighbors, the mailman, and someone who appeared to be delivering flowers to the wrong address, burst into spontaneous applause. "We're doing this," Tommy announced. "For real this time," Divine added. Great-grandmother Agatha looked smug. The two regular grandmothers looked relieved. Jen looked like she was mentally calculating billable hours. And Fern... Okay, Fern looked happy and sad at the same time, which was confusing. Congratulations, she said, hugging them both. I should go get everything ready. Actually, Divine said, we were hoping you'd stay for the ceremony as our friend. Both of us, Tommy added. This whole thing started because you helped us figure out what we actually wanted. Fern felt tears threatening. I'd love to stay. The actual wedding ceremony was, by Fern's standards, a beautiful disaster. Tommy forgot his vows and had to improvise, resulting in a rambling speech about how Divine's eyes were like really pretty eye things. Divine accidentally took flash photos during the quiet parts, and great-grandmother Agatha provided running commentary throughout the entire service. But when Tommy and Divine kissed, and when the impromptu crowd cheered, and when Divine immediately started photographing everyone's reactions, Fern thought it might be the most genuinely joyful wedding she'd ever attended. Since no one had planned a reception, Fern had focused all her energy on the ceremony itself. The wedding party ended up at the Grind, where Divine had been bedazzling napkins the day before. The coffee shop owner, a cheerful woman named Marie, was delighted to host an impromptu wedding reception, and immediately started making sandwiches and brewing celebratory coffee drinks, with names like the Matrimony Mocha and the Commitment Cappuccino. This is perfect, Divine said, taking pictures of everything. It's real. It's us. It's chaos, Fern observed, but she was smiling. The best kind of chaos, Tommy agreed, attempting to cut their makeshift wedding cake, which was actually a chocolate croissant with a candle stuck in it, with a plastic spoon. Fern found herself sitting at a small table with great-grandmother Agatha, watching the newlyweds laugh as they tried to feed each other bites of croissant. You did good, Fern told the old woman. I had a feeling about those two, great-grandmother Agatha replied. Same feeling I had about you. About me? You've been watching them all day like you're memorizing them. Fern felt her cheeks heat up. I'm happy for them. Uh-huh, and I suppose that has nothing to do with the fact that you've spent more time looking at the bride than the groom? Fern nearly choked on her coffee. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, dear. I'm stating it outright. You've got feelings for that girl? She's my friend, and she just got married to Tommy, who I also care about. Caring about people isn't a limited resource, Fern. You can care about both of them. Not the way Fern stopped, horrified by what she'd almost said. Not the way you what? Fern looked across the coffee shop at Divine, who was currently trying to photograph her own reflection in a spoon, while Tommy laughed at her antics. Not the way I think I'm falling in love with her, Fern whispered. Great-grandmother Agatha patted her hand gently. I know, dear. It's written all over your face. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of laughter, terrible coffee shop acoustics, Marie had found a karaoke machine, and Divine documenting everything with the enthusiasm of an anthropologist discovering a new civilization. Fern tried to focus on being happy for her friends, but great-grandmother Agatha's words kept echoing in her head. Was it really that obvious? Could everyone tell that she was... No, she wasn't going to think about it. Tommy and Divine were married now, and they were happy, and that was what mattered. But when Divine grabbed her hand and pulled her onto the tiny dance floor, which was really just the space between two tables, when they swayed together to a song playing from someone's phone, when Divine looked at her and said, Thank you for everything, Fern. I don't think I could have done this without you. Fern knew she was in trouble. Big trouble. Because somewhere in the process of planning this ridiculous wedding, somewhere between thinking Divine was her nemesis and realizing she was actually wonderful, Fern had done the stupidest possible thing. She'd fallen in love with the bride. You okay? Divine asked, noticing Fern's expression. You look like you might cry. Happy tears, Fern managed. Just happy tears. Good, Divine said, squeezing her hand. Because this is the happiest day of my life, and I want everyone else to be happy too. Fern squeezed back, memorizing the feeling of Divine's hand in hers, and tried to ignore the way her heart was breaking and soaring at the same time. As the impromptu reception wound down, reality began to set in. Tommy and Divine were married. Actually married. To each other. So, Tommy said, as they stood outside the coffee shop in the late afternoon sun, what now? Now we go home, Divine said. Separately, I assume, since we don't live together. Right. Separately. They stood there awkwardly, like they'd suddenly remembered they were strangers who'd just made a major life commitment. You could come to my place, Divine offered. I mean, we should probably talk about logistics and stuff. Logistics and stuff, Tommy agreed. Very important in a marriage. The most important, Divine said seriously. Fern watched this exchange with a mixture of amusement and heartache. They were so clearly perfect for each other, even when they were being awkward. I should go, she said. Let you two figure things out. Are you sure? Devine asked. You could come too. We could order pizza and plan out how this whole marriage thing is going to work. The invitation was tempting, but Fern knew she needed some space to process her feelings before she did something embarrassing, like confess her love to a woman who just married someone else. Rain check, she said. But call me tomorrow, okay? I want to hear how the first night of married life goes. We will, Tommy promised. Fern hugged them both goodbye, holding on to Devine perhaps a moment longer than strictly appropriate, and then watched as they walked away together, Tommy's hand resting gently on Devine's back. She was happy for them. She really was. So why did she feel like crying? Tommy and Devine made it exactly 3 days before their first fight as a married couple. It started over breakfast. Or rather, it started over the concept of breakfast, which apparently meant very different things to different people. Cereal is not a breakfast food, Tommy declared, watching in horror as Devine poured hot sauce over her Lucky Charms. It's literally called a breakfast cereal, Devine replied, taking a defiant bite. It's right there in the name. But hot sauce? On Lucky Charms? The marshmallows balance out the heat. Tommy stared at her like she'd just announced she was secretly an alien, which, given the hot sauce situation, wasn't entirely unreasonable. This is what I meant when I said I was weird about food, Devine continued. I thought you meant you were picky, not that you were culinarily adventurous in terrifying ways. I also put ketchup on scrambled eggs. Tommy made a sound like a wounded animal. And I eat ice cream for lunch sometimes. What kind of ice cream? Mint chocolate chip, with crushed pretzels mixed in. Tommy sat down heavily at her tiny kitchen table. Devine, I think we need to establish some ground rules about food. Ground rules? Like no condiments on breakfast cereals, no ice cream meals, no eating things that were never meant to be eaten together. Devine's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. Are you trying to control what I eat? I'm trying to preserve my sanity. By dictating my dietary choices? By preventing you from traumatizing innocent breakfast foods? They stared at each other across the table. Tommy was genuinely distressed about the Lucky Charms situation. Devine was getting that look she got when she was about to dig in her heels about something. You know what? Devine said, standing up abruptly. Maybe this was a mistake. The hot sauce? The marriage, Tommy. Maybe we rushed into this. Maybe we don't actually know each other well enough to live together. Because of cereal preferences? Because you're trying to change me on day 3. I'm not trying to change you. I'm trying to understand you. By establishing ground rules about my eating habits. They were both shouting now, which seemed excessive given that the argument was about breakfast food, but somehow they'd moved past Lucky Charms and into deeper territory. I'm scared, okay? Tommy finally said. I'm scared that we made a huge mistake, and I'm trying to control things because control feels safer than admitting I have no idea what I'm doing. Devine sat back down. Oh, and you're scared too, which is why you're picking a fight about hot sauce, instead of talking about the fact that we're married strangers trying to figure out how to be married non-strangers. Oh, Devine said again. They sat in silence for a moment, the absurdity of their fight settling around them. I don't actually care about the hot sauce, Tommy admitted. I don't actually think the marriage was a mistake, Devine replied. Want to start over? Yeah. Tommy stood up and walked to the kitchen doorway, then turned around and walked back. Good morning, wife, he said formally. I'm Tommy, your husband. I'm nervous about this whole situation, but I'm glad to be here with you. Good morning, husband, Devine replied, equally formal. I'm Devine, your wife. I eat weird food combinations when I'm anxious, but I promise not to subject you to all of them. I can probably handle some of them. Even the ice cream pretzels? Let's work up to the ice cream pretzels. They both started laughing, and just like that, the fight was over. Should we call Fern? Devine asked. Tell her we survived our first marital crisis. Tommy looked at his watch. It's 8 a.m. She's probably color-coding something. She's going to want a full report, complete with photographic documentation? Obviously. They grinned at each other, and Tommy realized that even when they were fighting, he liked being married to Devine. Meanwhile, Fern was indeed color-coding something, her client files organized by wedding date, theme, and likelihood of disaster, but she was having trouble concentrating. She'd been thinking about Tommy and Devine constantly for the past 3 days. Not in a creepy way. She genuinely cared about them and wanted their marriage to work. but she was also having some very unfriend-like thoughts about Divine that were making her feel guilty and confused. Her phone rang, interrupting her internal angst. "Fern, it's Divine. We had our first fight." "Oh no," Fern said, immediately worried. "Are you okay? What happened?" "We fought about breakfast cereal. It was ridiculous. But we worked it out." "Breakfast cereal?" "I put hot sauce on Lucky Charms and Tommy had an existential crisis." Fern found herself smiling despite her complicated feelings. "That does sound like Tommy. He's actually very sweet about my weird food habits now that we've talked about it. He even said he'd try the ice cream pretzel combination. That's brave of him, right? Anyway, I was calling because I wanted to ask you something." Fern's heart did a little skip. "What's up?" "Tommy and I were talking and we realized that we want to have an actual wedding reception. The coffee shop thing was perfect for the moment, but we want to celebrate properly with everyone who matters to us." "That sounds lovely. We want you to plan it." "Of course, I'd be honored to. And we want you to be maid of honor." Fern's words died in her throat. Maid of honor, standing up at Divine's reception, making a speech about how perfect she and Tommy were together, smiling while her heart broke into tiny pieces. "Fern, are you there?" "Yeah, sorry, I'm here. I'm just surprised." "Is that a yes?" Fern closed her eyes and made herself say the words. "Yes, I'd love to be your maid of honor." "Yay, this is going to be amazing. Oh, and Fern?" "Yeah? Thank you. For everything. I know I keep saying that, but I mean it. You've become such an important person in my life." After they hung up, Fern sat in her perfectly organized office and allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to feel sorry for herself. Then she pulled out a new planning binder and got to work. If she was going to be maid of honor at the wedding of the woman she was falling in love with, she was going to plan the most beautiful reception anyone had ever seen, even if it killed her. Over the next few weeks, Fern threw herself into planning Tommy and Divine's reception with the intensity of someone trying to distract herself from uncomfortable feelings. She met with them regularly, and each meeting was a special kind of torture. Because Tommy and Divine were falling in love. It was obvious to anyone with eyes. The way they looked at each other, the way Tommy would absent-mindedly reach for Divine's hand during planning sessions, the way Divine would light up whenever Tommy walked into a room. They were becoming a real couple. Not just two people who'd gotten married on a whim. Which should have made Fern happy. It did make her happy, in theory. In practice, it made her want to hide under her desk with a pint of ice cream and a good cry. "What about flowers?" Tommy asked during one of their planning meetings. "Divine loves those pictures you take of wildflowers." "Those aren't pictures I take," Divine laughed. "Those are pictures you take on your phone and text to me because you know I like them." Same difference. "It's not the same difference at all. You're the one with the eye for natural beauty. I learned it from watching you work." They were gazing at each other with the kind of soft, dopey expressions that usually made Fern roll her eyes when she saw them on other couples. When Tommy and Divine did it, it made her chest ache. "Wildflowers," Fern said briskly, making a note. "I can work with that." "Fern," Divine said, turning to her with concern. "Are you okay? You seem tense." "I'm fine, just focused on making this perfect for you two." "You don't have to make it perfect," Tommy said kindly. "We just want it to be us, you know?" "Controlled chaos," Divine added. "Our specialty." "Right," Fern said. "Controlled chaos. Got it." But she didn't get it. Not really. Because the more time she spent with them, the more she realized that what she was feeling wasn't just attraction to Divine. It was something deeper and more complicated. She was falling in love with both of them. Not in a romantic way with Tommy, but in a way that made her want to be part of their story, part of their chaos, part of their joy. She wanted to belong somewhere in their happiness. Which was impossible, because they were married to each other, and she was just the wedding planner who'd become a friend. Despite being already married, Tommy and Divine decided they wanted to have bachelor and bachelorette parties, because we missed out on all the traditional pre-wedding stuff, as Divine put it. Fern found herself planning Divine's bachelorette party, which felt like the universe testing her limits. Nothing too wild, Divine had requested. Just something fun with the girls. The problem was, Divine didn't have many close female friends. Her social circle consisted mainly of other photographers, most of whom were men, and a few cousins who lived out of state. So the bachelorette party ended up being Fern, Divine, Jen, who had somehow become part of their friend group through sheer persistence, and Marie from the coffee shop, who had insisted on being included after hosting their impromptu reception. They went to a painting class at a local art studio where they were supposed to paint identical landscapes while drinking wine. "This is perfect," Divine said, setting up her canvas. "Low-key, creative, and no one's going to end up in jail." "The night is young," Jen muttered, already struggling with her paintbrush. Fern had chosen the painting class specifically because it seemed safe, structured, contained, unlikely to lead to any emotional revelations or awkward moments. She should have known better. "So," Marie said, working on what appeared to be a very abstract interpretation of the assigned sunset, "how are things going with married life?" "Really good," Divine said, and her whole face lit up. "Like, surprisingly good. Tommy and I just fit, you know? We make sense together in a way I didn't expect." "That's wonderful," Fern said, focusing intently on painting a tree that looked more like a green blob. "He makes me laugh every day," Divine continued, "and he's so patient with my weird habits. Yesterday, I spent 2 hours photographing the way sunlight hit our kitchen counter, and instead of thinking I was crazy, he made me lunch so I wouldn't have to stop working." "Aw," Marie cooed, "that's true love right there." "I think it might be," Divine said softly. "I mean, I know we haven't been married long, but I think I'm falling in love with him. Really in love." Fern's paintbrush slipped, creating a large blue streak across her sunset. That's great, Divine. I'm so happy for you." "Thanks, and thank you again for everything you did to make this possible. If you hadn't helped us figure out what we actually wanted, you would have figured it out anyway," Fern said quickly. "You and Tommy are perfect together." "I don't know about perfect, but we're good together. Really good." Jen looked up from her painting, which appeared to be mostly wine stains at this point. "What about you, Fern? Anyone special in your life?" Fern nearly knocked over her wine glass. "Me? No, I'm focused on work right now." "You should get out there," Marie said encouragingly. "A woman like you shouldn't be single." "A woman like me? Smart, successful, beautiful, kind. You're a catch, Fern." "She really is," Divine agreed, and when Fern looked at her, there was something in her expression that made Fern's breath catch. Any person would be lucky to have you in their life. They held eye contact for a moment longer than strictly necessary, and Fern felt that familiar electricity again. But then Divine looked away, back to her painting, and the moment passed. "I'm fine on my own," Fern said, though her voice came out a little unsteady. Really. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of increasingly abstract paintings and wine-fueled laughter. By the end of the night, they'd all created masterpieces that looked nothing like the assigned landscape, and Fern had successfully avoided any more conversations about her love life. But as they were cleaning up, Divine approached her quietly. "Fern," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Sure. Are you happy? I mean, really happy?" It was such an unexpected question that Fern didn't have a prepared answer. "What do you mean?" I worry about you sometimes. You do so much for everyone else, but I want to make sure you're taking care of yourself too." The concern in Divine's voice was genuine, and it made Fern's heart ache in a different way. "I'm fine," she said. "I promise." "Okay," Divine said, but she didn't look entirely convinced. "Just, you know you deserve to be happy too, right? You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are." If only you knew, Fern thought, that someone is you. The night of Tommy and Divine's reception, Fern outdid herself. She'd transformed a simple community center into something magical. Strings of lights, wildflowers in mismatched vases, photographs from Divine's portfolio displayed around the room like an art gallery. "Fern," Divine breathed when she saw it, "this is incredible." "It's perfect." Tommy agreed. "It's so us." "That was the goal," Fern said, trying to ignore how beautiful Divine looked in her simple white dress, how happy Tommy looked in his properly fitted suit, how right they looked together. The reception was everything their coffee shop celebration hadn't been. Organized, elegant, but still somehow perfectly chaotic in the way that was uniquely Tommy and Divine. Great-grandmother Agatha held court at the head table, regaling anyone who would listen with stories of her matchmaking triumph. The two regular grandmothers had apparently bonded over their mutual deception and were now planning to collaborate on future romantic interventions. Jen was documenting everything with her phone for legal purposes, though what legal purposes no one was sure. And Fern was trying to enjoy herself while preparing for the most difficult part of the evening, her maid of honor speech. She'd written and rewritten it a dozen times, trying to find the right balance between heartfelt and appropriate, between honest and not too revealing about her own feelings. When the time came, she stood up with shaking hands and tapped her glass. "Hi, everyone," she began, her voice surprisingly steady. "For those who don't know me, I'm Fern, and I have the honor of being Divine's maid of honor." The room settled into attentive silence. I have to admit, when I first met Tommy and Divine, I thought their story was completely insane. An arranged marriage between strangers? It seemed like a recipe for disaster. Scattered laughter from the audience. But then I got to know them, and I realized that sometimes the most beautiful things come from the most unexpected places. Tommy and Divine didn't fall in love despite the chaos of how they met. They fell in love because of it. They're both people who find beauty in disaster, who can laugh in the middle of confusion, who make each other braver just by being themselves. She looked at the happy couple, who were holding hands and watching her with tears in their eyes. "Tommy, you make Divine laugh every day, and you see her talent even when she doesn't see it herself. Divine, you show Tommy that taking risks can lead to the most amazing adventures. And you capture the beauty in every moment, even the messy ones." Fern paused, gathering her courage for the hardest part. "Watching you two fall in love has been," she swallowed hard, "it's been one of the greatest privileges of my life. You've shown me that love isn't always neat or planned or logical. Sometimes it's chaotic and scary and completely unexpected. But when it's real, when it's right, it's the most beautiful thing in the world." She raised her glass. "So here's to Tommy and Divine. May your love story continue to be beautifully, perfectly chaotic. And may you always find reasons to laugh together, even when you're arguing about breakfast cereal." The room erupted in laughter and applause. Tommy and Divine were crying happy tears. And when Divine mouthed, "Thank you," Fern felt her heart break and heal at the same time. She'd done it. She'd given the perfect maid of honor speech without revealing her own feelings, without making it about herself, without ruining their perfect day. So why did she feel like she was dying inside? After the speeches, the dancing began. Fern watched from the sidelines as Tommy and Divine had their first dance as a properly celebrated married couple. They moved together like they'd been dancing together for years, Tommy spinning Divine under the lights while she laughed with pure joy. They looked so happy, so perfectly matched, so completely in love that Fern finally had to admit the truth to herself. She wasn't just falling in love with Divine, she was completely, hopelessly, devastatingly in love with her. And there was absolutely nothing she could do about it. "They look happy," said a voice beside her. Fern turned to find great-grandmother Agatha, who had somehow managed to wheel her chair over without Fern noticing. "They do," Fern agreed. "Really happy. And how are you doing, dear?" "I'm fine. It's a beautiful reception." "It's not what I asked." Great-grandmother Agatha had a way of looking at people that made lying feel impossible. Fern started, then stopped. "I'm having some complicated feelings." "About?" Fern looked around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned down to whisper. "I think I might be in love with Divine." "I know," Great-grandmother Agatha said calmly. "You know? You've been looking at that girl like she hung the moon since the day you met her. It's not exactly subtle." Fern felt her cheeks burn. "Is it that obvious? To someone who's been watching people fall in love for 97 years? Yes. Does she know?" "I don't think so. She's a bit distracted by being newly married and all." "Good," Fern said, though it didn't feel good. "That's good." "Is it?" "Of course it is. She's married, she's happy, and I'm not going to mess that up by having inappropriate feelings." Great-grandmother Agatha was quiet for a moment, watching Tommy dip Divine dramatically while she giggled. "Can I tell you something, Fern?" "Sure." "In all my years of meddling in other people's love lives, I've learned that feelings aren't inappropriate. They just are. It's what you do with them that matters." "What am I supposed to do with them?" "She's married to Tommy, and they're perfect together." "They are good together," Great-grandmother Agatha agreed. "But that doesn't mean your feelings don't matter." "It doesn't?" "Fern, dear, you don't have to suffer in silence to prove you're a good friend. You can love someone and want them to be happy, even when that happiness doesn't include you. But you also don't have to pretend your heart isn't breaking." Fern felt tears threatening. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Love someone I can't have. Be happy for them when it hurts so much." Great-grandmother Agatha reached over and patted Fern's hand gently. "One day at a time, dear. One day at a time." The song ended, and Tommy and Divine separated, both flushed and laughing. Divine looked around the room until her eyes found Fern's, and she waved happily. Fern waved back, trying to smile, trying to look like she was fine, trying to be the friend that Divine deserved. It was going to be a long night. As the reception wound down, Fern found herself helping with cleanup, while Tommy and Divine made their rounds, saying goodbye to guests. She was focused on packing up centerpieces when Divine appeared beside her. "Leave that," Divine said. "Dance with me." "What?" "One last dance before we go." "Come on." Before Fern could protest, Divine had grabbed her hand and pulled her onto the nearly empty dance floor. A slow song was playing, something soft and romantic that made Fern's heart race for all the wrong reasons. "Divine, I should really—" "Shh, just dance with me, as friends." But as they swayed together in the dimly lit room, with Divine's arms around her neck and her own hands resting on Divine's waist, it didn't feel like friends. It felt like everything Fern had been trying not to want. "Thank you," Divine said softly, "for everything. This whole night was perfect. I'm glad you're happy." "I am happy, really, truly happy. And a lot of that is because of you." Fern looked down, unable to meet Divine's eyes. "You don't need to thank me anymore. Seeing you and Tommy together is thanks enough." "Fern, look at me." Reluctantly, Fern raised her eyes to meet Divine's gaze. "You're one of the most important people in my life now," Divine said. "I hope you know that." "You're important to me too," Fern whispered, and it came out more raw and honest than she'd intended. Something shifted in Divine's expression. For a moment, they were just looking at each other, and Fern could swear she saw something like recognition in Divine's eyes, something that made her wonder if maybe, possibly, "There you are." Tommy's voice broke the moment as he approached them on the dance floor. "Sorry to interrupt, but we should probably head out soon." "Of course," Fern said, stepping back quickly. "You two should go enjoy your wedding night." "Want to come back to our place?" Divine asked. "We could order pizza and look at all the photos I took tonight." The invitation was innocent, friendly, exactly the kind of thing good friends did together. But Fern knew she couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle watching Tommy and Divine be casually intimate. Couldn't handle pretending her heart wasn't breaking. "Rain check?" she said. "I should finish cleaning up here." "Are you sure?" Tommy asked. "We could help with cleanup first." "No, go. Enjoy being newlyweds." Divine hesitated like she wanted to say something else. But Tommy was already taking her hand. "Come on, wife," he said playfully. "Let's go home." "Okay," Divine said, but she was still looking at Fern with that strange expression. "We'll call you tomorrow." "Absolutely." Fern hugged them both goodbye, holding on just a little too long again, and then watched as they left together, Tommy's arm around Divine's shoulders, both of them glowing with happiness. She was alone in the community center with the remnants of their perfect reception, and for the first time all day, she allowed herself to cry. 3 months later, Tommy and Divine's marriage was falling apart, and somehow it was all Fern's fault. Not directly, of course. She hadn't done anything wrong, hadn't interfered, hadn't even told them about her feelings. She'd been the perfect supportive friend, always available when they needed her, always ready with advice, or help, or just a listening ear. Which was exactly the problem. "I don't understand what's happening," Divine said, sitting in Fern's office with tears in her eyes. "Everything was so good, and now—" Now what?" Fern asked gently, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. Fern's heart stopped. "What?" "I'm married to Tommy, and I love him, I do. But ever since the reception, ever since that dance we had, I can't get you out of my head. I think about you when I wake up, when I'm working, when I'm trying to fall asleep. I think about the way you look at me, the way you laugh at my terrible jokes, the way you made our wedding perfect, even though it must have been." Divine stopped, covering her face with her hands. "Must have been what?" Fern whispered. "Must have been torture. If you feel the same way about me that I feel about you." There it was, out in the open, the thing they'd both been carefully not saying for months. "Divine? Do you?" Divine looked up, her eyes desperate. "Feel the same way?" Fern could have lied, should have lied, should have protected Tommy and Divine's marriage by denying everything. Instead, she told the truth. "Yes," she said quietly, "I do." Divine made a sound somewhere between relief and despair. "What are we going to do?" "Nothing," Fern said firmly. "We're going to do nothing. You're married, Divine. You're married to a wonderful man who loves you." "I know that, but I can't help how I feel about you." And I can't help how I feel about you either. But that doesn't mean we act on it. So what, we just pretend? We just ignore this? Fern's heart was breaking all over again, but she knew what the right answer was. Yes, that's exactly what we do. I can't, Divine said, standing up abruptly. I can't pretend anymore, Fern. I can't keep having dinner with you and Tommy and acting like everything's normal when all I want to do is tell you that I think I'm falling in love with you. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. I know you make me feel more like myself than anyone ever has. I know you see me in a way that makes me feel beautiful and talented and worth something. I know that when I'm with you, I feel like I'm home. Fern closed her eyes, trying to block out the words that were everything she'd wanted to hear and everything that would destroy their lives. Divine, please, don't do this. I'm not doing anything. I'm just telling you the truth. The truth is going to ruin everything. Everything's already ruined, Fern. Tommy knows something's wrong. He keeps asking me what's bothering me, and I keep lying to him because I can't tell him that I'm in love with someone else, with his friend, with the person who made our marriage possible in the first place. The irony was almost too much to bear. Fern had brought them together, and now she was tearing them apart just by existing. I should go, Divine said when Fern didn't respond. I should go figure out what I'm going to tell my husband. Divine, wait. But she was already gone, leaving Fern alone with the wreckage of everything she tried so hard to protect. Tommy showed up at Fern's office 2 days later, looking like he hadn't slept since the conversation with Divine. She told me, he said without preamble. Fern's stomach dropped. Tommy, I'm so sorry. I never meant for... I know. He sat down heavily in the chair across from her desk. I know you didn't mean for this to happen. Hell, I don't think any of us meant for this to happen. How are you? Fern asked, though it was a stupid question. He looked terrible. Tommy ran his hands through his hair. I'm heartbroken and confused and weirdly not surprised. Not surprised? Fern, I've been watching my wife fall in love with you for months. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, but I never encouraged it. I know. That's what makes this so fucked up. You've been nothing but a good friend to both of us, and now our marriage is falling apart because of feelings none of us asked for. They sat in miserable silence for a moment. What happens now? Fern asked. I don't know. Divine and we're taking some time apart. She's staying with her cousin while we figure things out. I'm so sorry, Tommy. Stop apologizing. This isn't your fault. It feels like my fault. Yeah, well, feelings are complicated. Trust me, I'm an expert on that now. Tommy stood up to leave, then turned back. Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you love her? Really love her? Not just attraction or infatuation, but actual love? Fern could have lied again. It would have been kinder. Yes, she said. I really love her. Tommy nodded like he'd expected that answer. Then maybe this isn't the disaster I thought it was. What do you mean? I mean, maybe some people are just meant to be together, even when the timing is all wrong and the situation is impossible. Tommy, I'm not giving you my blessing or anything, he said quickly. I'm hurt and angry, and I don't know if I'll ever be okay with this, but I also don't want to spend the rest of my life married to someone who's in love with someone else. You don't have to. Yeah, I do, because despite everything, I want Davine to be happy, and I want you to be happy, and if that means you're happy together, he shrugged helplessly. I guess I'll figure out how to live with that. He left without another word, and Fern sat in her office wondering how everything had gone so terribly, beautifully wrong. For 2 weeks, Fern heard nothing from either Tommy or Davine. She threw herself into work, planning other people's perfect weddings while her own heart sat in pieces, and tried not to think about what was happening between them. She failed spectacularly. Every day, she expected a phone call, from Divine saying she was coming home to Tommy, from Tommy saying they were getting divorced, from one of them saying they never wanted to see her again. The silence was almost worse than any of those options would have been. Great-grandmother Agatha called on a Thursday afternoon. How are you holding up, dear? She asked. How did you know? Fern asked wearily. Tommy came to see me. He's staying in my guest room while he and Divine figure things out. How is he? Sad, but not as devastated as I expected. What does that mean? It means he's a smart young man who can see the writing on the wall. He married Divine hoping they'd fall in love, and they did, just not with each other. They fell in love with each other too, Fern protested. At first, anyway. They fell in like with each other. They fell in compatibility. They fell in friendship. But love? Real can't live without you, love? That's what Divine feels for you, and what you feel for her. It doesn't matter what we feel. She's married. Not for much longer, I suspect. Fern's heart jumped. What does that mean? It means sometimes the heart wants what it wants, and fighting it just makes everyone miserable. So they're getting divorced? I don't know yet, but I think you should be prepared for that possibility. After great-grandmother Agatha hung up, Fern sat staring at her phone, not sure if she was hoping for that possibility or dreading it. The call came on a Sunday evening. Divine's name on Fern's phone screen, and Fern's heart racing as she answered. Hi. Hi. Can we talk? In person? Of course. Where? The church where Tommy and I got married. Is that too weird? Nothing about this situation is normal, so why start now? Divine laughed, and it sounded like crying. I'll see you there in 20 minutes. Fern found Divine sitting in the same pew where they'd sat on the morning of her wedding, staring at the altar where she'd promised to love Tommy forever. How poetic, Fern said, sitting down beside her. I've always been drawn to dramatic locations for important conversations. Is this an important conversation? Divine turned to look at her, and Fern could see that she'd been crying. Tommy and I are getting divorced. Even though Fern had been expecting it, hearing the words out loud hit her like a punch to the stomach. I'm sorry. Are you? Yes. I never wanted your marriage to end because of me. It didn't end because of you, Fern. It ended because we got married for the wrong reasons, to the wrong people. Tommy isn't the wrong person for you. He's wonderful. He is wonderful. He's kind and funny and patient, and he deserves someone who loves him the way he deserves to be loved. But that someone isn't me. Divine reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box, her wedding rings. We signed the papers yesterday. It'll be final in a few months, but it's over. How is Tommy handling it? Better than I expected, honestly. I think he's relieved. We both are in a weird way. We tried so hard to make it work, but we were trying to force something that was never really there. They sat in silence for a moment, both looking at the altar, where so many people had promised to love each other forever. So what now? Fern asked. Now I ask you the most terrifying question I've ever asked anyone. Fern's heart started racing. What's that? Divine turned to face her completely, taking Fern's hands in hers. Fern Morrison, would you like to go on a date with me? It should have been the happiest moment of Fern's life. The woman she loved was free, asking her out, looking at her with hope and nervous excitement. Instead, Fern felt like the world was crashing down around her. I can't, she whispered. What? I can't date you, Divine. Not now. Maybe not ever. Divine's face went pale. But you said you loved me. I do love you. That's why I can't do this. That makes no sense. Fern pulled her hands free and stood up, needing space to think, to breathe, to figure out how to explain something she didn't fully understand herself. Tommy is my friend. He was my friend before he was your husband, and he's still my friend now. And friends don't date their friends' ex-wives, especially when they're part of the reason the marriage ended. But Tommy said what? He said he hoped we'd be happy together. He gave me his blessing, Fern. Tommy is a good person who's trying to do the right thing in an impossible situation. That doesn't mean it actually is the right thing. Divine stood up too, her voice rising. So what, you're going to sacrifice both our happiness to protect Tommy's feelings? Even though he literally told me he wants us to be together? I'm trying to protect everyone's feelings, including yours. How is rejecting me protecting my feelings? Fern felt tears starting. Because this whole situation is built on disaster, Divine. We fell for each other while you were married to someone else. We destroyed a marriage just by existing. What kind of foundation is that for a relationship? It's an honest foundation. It's a terrible foundation. Every time we fight, every time things get hard, we'll remember that we started with betrayal and heartbreak and ruined friendships. So we just, what? We just pretend we don't love each other? We try to figure out how to be friends. Real friends, without all this. Fern gestured helplessly between them. I don't want to be your friend, Fern. I want to be with you. Well, you can't. Not like this. Divine stared at her in disbelief. I don't understand you. I finally tell you how I feel. I leave my marriage. I offer you everything I have. And you're saying no because you're worried about propriety? I'm saying no because I love you enough to want us to have a real chance someday. And starting now, like this, isn't a real chance. It's just more chaos. When? Divine demanded. When would be the right time? When Tommy gets remarried? When enough time has passed that people stop whispering about us. When we're both so old we've forgotten why we loved each other in the first place. Fern didn't have a good answer for that because she didn't know. All she knew was that this felt wrong, even though it was everything she wanted. I need time, she said finally. We both need time. You need time to figure out who you are when you're not married to Tommy. And I need time to figure out if what I feel for you is real love or just circumstantial attraction. It's real love, Fern. I know the difference. Do you? Because 6 months ago, you thought what you felt for Tommy was real love too. The words hung in the air between them like a slap. Divine's face went white, then red, then white again. That's not fair, she said quietly. Maybe not, but it's true. Divine picked up her purse and the ring box, her movements sharp and angry. Fine, she said. You want time? You've got it. All the time in the world. She started to leave, then turned back. But don't expect me to wait around forever, Fern. I've spent enough of my life being in love with people who don't want me back. Divine? But she was already walking away, her footsteps echoing in the empty church, leaving Fern alone with her noble intentions and her breaking heart. 6 months passed. Tommy moved to another city for a fresh start and a new job. He sent Fern a postcard from Seattle, a picture of Pike Place Market, with "Starting over isn't so bad" written on the back. He sounded happy, or at least hopeful, which was more than Fern could say for herself. Divine threw herself into her photography with the intensity of someone trying to forget. She got a gallery show, then another one. Her disaster wedding photos became famous in certain circles, and she started getting commissioned for all sorts of events. She was successful, acclaimed, busy. She was also, according to great-grandmother Agatha, who had become Fern's primary source of Divine updates, dating someone. A painter named Marcus who appreciated her artistic vision and didn't mind her weird food combinations. She seems happy, great-grandmother Agatha reported during one of their weekly coffee dates. Good, Fern said, stirring her latte with unnecessary violence. I'm glad she's happy. Are you? Am I what? Glad she's happy. Fern considered this. Yes and no, and I hate myself for the no part. The no part is normal, dear. You're allowed to be jealous. I gave up the right to be jealous when I turned her down. You gave up the right to act on the jealousy. You didn't give up the right to feel it. Fern had been having variations of this conversation with herself for months. She'd done the right thing, the noble thing, the thing that protected everyone's feelings and preserved everyone's dignity. So why did she feel like she'd made the biggest mistake of her life? I saw her last week, great-grandmother Agatha said casually. Fern's spoon clattered against her cup. Where? The grocery store. She looked good, healthy. She asked about you. What did she ask? Whether you were seeing anyone. Whether you seemed happy. Whether you ever talked about her. What did you tell her? The truth. That you're not seeing anyone, you don't seem particularly happy, and you never talk about her directly, but you go very quiet whenever someone else mentions her name. You didn't have to tell her all that, didn't I? Because it seems to me like you're both being very stupid about this whole situation. I did what I thought was right. I know you did, but sometimes what we think is right and what actually is right are two different things. Fern stared into her coffee, seeing swirls of cream that reminded her of the way light had looked on Divine's face during their last dance. It's too late now anyway, she said. She's with someone else. Is she? You just said she was dating that painter. I said she went on a few dates with a painter. That's hardly the same thing as being with someone. Still, she's moved on, which is what I wanted. Is it? Great-grandmother Agatha had a way of asking simple questions that made Fern's entire worldview feel unstable. I don't know what I wanted, Fern admitted. I thought I wanted everyone to be happy and everything to be clean and proper and correct. But mostly I think I was scared. Of what? Of everything. Of loving someone that much. Of being responsible for someone else's happiness. Of messing it up the way I messed up her marriage to Tommy. You didn't mess up her marriage to Tommy, dear. That marriage was doomed from the start. Because of me. Because they weren't in love with each other. They were in love with the idea of being in love. Fern had heard variations of this argument before, but she'd never quite believed it. What if you're wrong? She asked. What if they could have made it work if I hadn't interfered just by existing? Then they would have made it work. Love isn't that fragile, Fern. If Tommy and Divine had really been meant for each other, your presence wouldn't have changed that. And what if Divine and I aren't meant for each other either? What if I'm just the person she thinks she wants because she couldn't have me? What if you are meant for each other and you're throwing it away because you're too scared to find out? That was the question that kept Fern awake at night. Fern almost didn't go to Divine's gallery opening. She'd received an invitation, a formal card with one of Divine's photographs on the front, a bride laughing as rain poured down on her wedding dress, but she'd spent weeks debating whether attending would be appropriate. In the end, it was great-grandmother Agatha who convinced her. She invited you for a reason, the old woman said. Go find out what that reason is. So, Fern found herself standing in a crowded gallery on a Friday evening, surrounded by Divine's work and trying not to cry. The photographs were extraordinary. Not just the wedding disaster series that had made her famous, but new work too. Portraits of people in transition, landscapes that somehow captured emotion, street photography that found beauty in everyday chaos. They're incredible, aren't they? Said a voice beside her. Fern turned to find a tall man with paint-stained fingers looking at the same photograph she was studying, a picture of an elderly couple dancing at what appeared to be a disaster-stricken wedding, their faces radiant with joy despite the chaos around them. They are, Fern agreed. She has such a unique eye. I'm Marcus, the man said, extending his hand. Of course he was, the painter, the one Divine was supposedly dating. Fern, she replied, shaking his hand and trying not to scrutinize his face for signs of what Divine saw in him. You're Fern Morrison? The wedding planner? You know who I am? Marcus smiled. Divine talks about you a lot. You're kind of a legend in her stories. I'm not sure that's a good thing. It's definitely a good thing. She credits you with teaching her that chaos can be beautiful, that disaster doesn't have to mean failure. Before Fern could respond to that, a familiar voice called her name. Fern, you came. Divine appeared at her elbow, radiant in a black dress that somehow managed to be both elegant and slightly chaotic. Her hair pinned up in a way that suggested it might fall down at any moment. I wouldn't miss it, Fern said, and meant it. These photographs are Divine, they're incredible. Thanks, that means a lot coming from you. They stood there awkwardly for a moment, aware that Marcus was watching their interaction with interest. I should let you two catch up, Marcus said diplomatically. Divine, I'll find you later. Sure, Divine said, but she was looking at Fern. When Marcus disappeared into the crowd, Divine stepped closer. How have you been? She asked. Good, busy, you? The same. Another awkward pause. So, Fern said, Marcus seems nice. He is nice, very nice. That's good, I'm happy for you. Divine studied her face. Are you? Of course, you deserve someone who appreciates your work. And then Divine studied her face. And Divine studied her face. Are you? Of course, you deserve someone who appreciates your work. To me, Madison's work and kindness appreciated sometimes, she said playfully, and Divine studied her face. Are you endorsing me? She said good busy, you? He asked another awkward pause. Maybe busy, you seem nice. Of course, you deserve someone who appreciates your work. To me, of course, you deserve someone who appreciates your work. Of course, you deserve someone who appreciates your work. Maybe, of course, you deserve someone who appreciates your work. Of course, you deserve someone who appreciates your work. Divine studied her face. Are you? Of course, you deserve someone who appreciates your work. To me, of course, who understands your artistic vision. Is that what you think Marcus does? Doesn't he? Divine was quiet for a moment, looking around the gallery at her work, at the people admiring it, at Marcus across the room talking enthusiastically to a potential buyer. He appreciates my work, she said finally, but I don't think he understands it. Not really. What do you mean? He sees the technical skill, the artistic composition, all of that. But he doesn't see why I take these pictures. He doesn't understand that I'm not documenting disasters. I'm documenting resilience. I'm showing people that love survives even when everything else falls apart. Fern looked at the photograph nearest to them. A groom helping his bride navigate a flooded church aisle, both of them laughing. Like this one, Divine continued. Marcus sees a funny picture of people making the best of a bad situation. But what I see, what I was trying to capture, is the moment when two people choose each other, even when their perfect day goes completely wrong. That's beautiful, Fern said softly. You get it. You always get it. Their eyes met, and for a moment, they were back in that church 6 months ago, hearts breaking and mending simultaneously. Divine, I know, Divine said quickly. I know you need more time. I wanted you to know that I understand why you said no, and I respect it, even though it's killing me. It's killing me too. Then why? Because I want us to be right, Divine. When we finally try this, I want us to be right. Not rushed, not built on guilt or rebound, or timing that's convenient for everyone else. I want us to choose each other, because we can't imagine not choosing each other. Divine smiled sadly. And when will that be? I don't know, but I'll know when I know. That's a very unsatisfying answer. I'm aware. Someone called Divine's name from across the room, a critic wanting to interview her about her latest series. I should go, Divine said. But Fern, thank you for coming. It means everything to me that you're here. Fern watched her walk away, watched her transform back into the successful, confident artist surrounded by admirers and attention. But for just a moment, in their conversation, she'd seen the Divine who put hot sauce on Lucky Charms and worried about bedazzling napkins and fell in love with people she couldn't have. And Fern realized something that should have been obvious months ago. She wasn't waiting for the right time to love Divine. She was waiting for the courage to let herself be loved back. The next morning, Fern called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years and spent the day in her apartment, staring at the ceiling and having what her therapist would probably call a breakthrough. She'd been telling herself that she was being noble, protecting everyone's feelings, waiting for the right moment. But really, she'd been protecting herself from the possibility of failure, from the messiness of real love, from the chance that maybe, just maybe, this beautiful disaster of a situation could turn into something even more beautiful. She'd spent so long planning other people's perfect weddings that she'd forgotten that the best love stories weren't perfect. They were real. They were complicated. They were full of bad timing and difficult choices and mistakes that somehow led to exactly the right place. Like Tommy and Divine's arranged marriage, leading to Tommy and Divine realizing they weren't right for each other, but were both right for different people entirely. Like Fern thinking Divine was her nemesis, only to discover she was actually the love of her life. Like all of them making terrible, beautiful, chaotic choices that somehow added up to a story that was messier than anything Fern would ever have planned, but more honest than anything she'd ever experienced. Her phone buzzed. A text from great-grandmother Agatha. How is the gallery opening? Fern stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Enlightening. Good. Now stop being an idiot and call that girl. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You love her. She loves you. You're both free adults. Everything else is just noise. Fern set down her phone and looked around her perfectly organized apartment. Her color-coded closet, her labeled storage containers, her 17 different wedding planning binders arranged by system and season. Everything in its place, everything planned, everything under control. Everything, except her heart, which was currently staging a revolt against her brain's carefully constructed arguments for why this couldn't work. She picked up her phone and dialed before she could lose her nerve. Hello? Divine? It's Fern. I know, what's wrong? You sound weird. Nothing's wrong. Actually, everything's wrong, but not in a bad way. That's not cryptic at all. Fern took a deep breath. I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Okay. Are you happy? With Marcus, with your life, with how things are now? There was a long pause. I'm content, Divine said finally. I'm successful. I'm independent. I'm doing work I love. That's not what I asked. I know. So are you happy? Another pause, longer this time. No, Divine whispered. I'm not happy. I'm fine. I'm functional. I'm moving forward with my life. But I'm not happy. What would make you happy? Fern, don't do this. Don't make me say it if you're not ready to hear it. I'm ready to hear it. Are you sure? And I'm sure. You would make me happy, Divine said, her voice barely audible. Being with you, building something real with you, not having to pretend that what I feel for you is just friendship or nostalgia or some kind of rebound situation. You would make me happy, Fern. You do make me happy even when you're breaking my heart. Fern felt tears start, the good kind this time. Then let's be happy, she said. What? Let's be happy. Together. Messily, imperfectly, chaotically, but together. Are you serious right now? Dead serious. I love you, Divine. I've loved you since the day you were bedazzling napkins in that coffee shop. And I'm tired of pretending that's going to change. I'm tired of waiting for the perfect moment that's never going to come. I'm tired of being noble when what I really want to be is yours. Divine was crying now. Fern could hear it in her voice. What about Tommy? What about propriety? What about all your reasons why we couldn't do this? Tommy is happy in Seattle. Propriety is overrated. And my reasons were mostly just fear dressed up as logic. And the fear is still there, but it's not bigger than the love anymore. Fern, I know it won't be easy. I know people will talk, and it'll be complicated, and we'll probably mess it up in spectacular ways sometimes. But I also know that I've spent 6 months trying to not love you, and it hasn't worked. So maybe it's time to try the opposite. What's the opposite? Loving you on purpose, loving you out loud, loving you like you deserve to be loved. There was silence on the other end of the line. And for a terrifying moment, Fern thought maybe she'd waited too long. Maybe Divine had finally moved on for real. Then, what about Marcus? What about him? Fern, I'm supposed to have dinner with him tonight. We've been talking about making things more serious. Fern's heart clenched, but she forced herself to stay calm. Do you want to make things more serious with him? No, but it seemed like the reasonable thing to do, since the person I actually want to be with has been unavailable. Well, Fern said, I'm available now, if you want me. If I want you, Divine laughed through her tears. Fern, I've wanted you since the moment you laughed at my bedazzled napkin. I've wanted you through your entire relationship with logic and nobility and perfect timing. I've wanted you while dating other people and trying to convince myself I could love someone else. Of course I want you. Then come over. Now? Right now, before either of us can overthink this anymore. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I'll be here. After they hung up, Fern looked around her apartment one more time. Everything's still in its place. Everything's still organized and controlled. Except now, finally, it was about to get beautifully, perfectly chaotic. She couldn't wait. Divine arrived in 15 minutes, which meant she'd either driven like a maniac or broken several traffic laws. Possibly both. She was still in her pajamas, flannel pants, and an oversized t-shirt that said, I shoot people, with a camera graphic underneath. Her hair was in a messy bun. She wasn't wearing makeup, and she looked absolutely perfect. Hi, she said when Fern opened the door. Hi. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Both suddenly shy now that the moment they'd been avoiding and wanting for months was actually here. So, Divine said, now what? Now we figure it out as we go, Fern said, stepping aside to let her in. Want some coffee? I have regular coffee, not whatever artistic interpretation Marie makes at the shop. Regular coffee sounds perfect. They moved to the kitchen, Fern grateful for the familiar ritual of making coffee, something to do with her hands while her heart adjusted to this new reality. Fern, Divine said as Fern measured coffee grounds. Yeah. I broke up with Marcus. Fern's hands stilled. When? About 10 minutes ago. I called him on the way over here. It seemed like the right thing to do before showing up at your apartment in my pajamas to declare my undying love. You're declaring your undying love? I'm declaring something. I haven't decided exactly what yet. Fern turned around, coffee forgotten. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that I've spent the last 6 months trying to talk myself out of loving you, and it's been a complete failure. I'm thinking that life is short and unpredictable, and sometimes the wrong timing turns out to be exactly the right timing in disguise. And what? And I'm thinking that I'd rather mess this up with you than get it right with anyone else. Fern crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and kissed her. It was everything she'd imagined, and nothing like she'd expected. Divine tasted like toothpaste and possibility, and when she kissed back, Fern felt like everything that had been out of place for months was finally exactly where it belonged. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Divine smiled. So, she said, that happened. That happened, Fern agreed. Any regrets? Not a single one. Good, because I have a confession to make. What's that? I've been carrying this around for 6 months, waiting for the right moment to give it to you. Divine reached into her pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. What is it? Open it. Inside was a photo. The picture Divine had taken of Fern during their first wedding planning meeting, when Fern had been laughing at Tommy's ribbon tangling incident. But it wasn't just any photo. Divine had somehow captured the exact moment when Fern's professional mask had slipped and her real smile had broken through. She looked beautiful and genuine and completely herself. "When did you take this?" Fern asked, studying the image. "That first day. You were laughing and the light was perfect and I had to capture it. You looked so happy." "I was happy. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was happy because I was with you." "I've looked at this picture every day for 6 months," Divine admitted. "It's been on my nightstand, reminding me of what I was waiting for." Fern felt tears threatening again. "It's beautiful. You're beautiful. And I love you. Not in a complicated, guilty, confused way anymore. Just simply, completely. I love you, Fern Morrison." "I love you too. Divine, whatever your last name is now. Still Hartwell. I never changed it back after the divorce. Too much paperwork. I love you, Divine Hartwell." They kissed again, and this time when they broke apart, they were both crying and laughing at the same time. "So what now?" Divine asked. "Do we have a plan? A timeline? A color-coded strategy for how this relationship is going to work?" Fern looked around her perfectly organized apartment, then back at Divine in her rumpled pajamas, with her messy hair and her beautiful chaotic heart. "No plan," she said. "For the first time in my life, no plan at all. We'll just see what happens." "That sounds terrifying." "It sounds perfect." 1 year later. "I can't believe you're making me wear a tie to my own gallery opening," Divine complained, fumbling with the silk noose around her neck. "It's not a tie, it's a bow tie. There's a difference," Fern said, reaching over to fix it. "And it's not just your gallery opening, it's our gallery opening." "Our? The photographs are yours, but I planned the event. We're a team now, remember?" Divine grinned. "Team chaos. Team-controlled chaos. There's nothing controlled about us. There's nothing chaotic about us anymore either." They were getting ready in Divine's apartment. Their apartment now, since Fern had moved in 3 months ago after deciding that perfectly organized living was overrated compared to perfectly disorganized loving. The apartment was a testament to their relationship. Fern's label maker sitting next to Divine's collection of vintage cameras, color-coded files mixed in with contact sheets. A kitchen that somehow accommodated both proper meal planning and Divine's habit of putting hot sauce on everything. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. They shouldn't have worked, but they did. "Are you nervous?" Fern asked, adjusting Divine's bow tie one more time. "About the show? No. About seeing everyone we know in one room, including Tommy and his new girlfriend." Slightly terrified, Tommy was flying in from Seattle for the opening along with his new girlfriend Sarah, who was apparently a marine biologist who shared his love of reality TV and his allergy to pets. According to great-grandmother Agatha's extensive intelligence network, they were very happy together. "It'll be fine," Fern said. "Tommy's moved on, we've moved on, everyone's happy." "Are we happy?" Divine asked suddenly. Fern stopped fussing with the bow tie and looked at her. "Are you having second thoughts?" "No, not second thoughts. More like perspective thoughts. A year ago, I was married to someone else, and you were planning other people's weddings, and neither of us had any idea this was where we'd end up. Do you wish we'd ended up somewhere else?" "God, no. Sometimes I can't believe we're here, living together, working together, being stupidly in love, and actually getting to do something about it." Fern smiled. "Believe it, we fought for this, remember? We earned this." "We did, didn't we?" "We absolutely did." The gallery opening was everything Fern had planned it to be, and everything Divine hadn't expected. The photographs, a new series called Beautiful Disasters, Love Stories in Unexpected Places, were receiving rave reviews from critics and genuine emotion from viewers. The centerpiece of the exhibit was a triptych, 3 photographs showing the progression of Tommy and Divine's wedding day. The first showed the chaos of the morning, with overflowing holy water and arguing grandmothers. The second captured the ceremony itself, with Tommy's improvised vows and Divine's flash photography. The third was from the reception, Fern and Divine dancing together, both of them looking at each other with expressions of wonder and longing and something that might have been recognition. "I can't believe you included that last one," Fern said, standing in front of the triptych with a glass of wine. "It's the most honest photograph I've ever taken," Divine replied. It shows the exact moment I realized I was in love with you. When did you realize it? When you were looking at me like I was the most beautiful thing you'd ever seen, and I realized I was looking at you the same way. We were both married to other people at that point. Technically, I was married to other people. You were just there, being perfect and breaking my heart without even trying. Fern laughed. I was trying, just not very hard. Good thing. If you'd tried any harder, I might not have figured out what I was feeling until it was too late. Across the room, Tommy was standing with Sarah, both of them laughing at something great-grandmother Agatha was telling them. When he caught Fern's eye, he smiled and raised his glass in a toast. To second chances, he mouthed. To happy endings, Fern mouthed back. What are you two doing? Divine asked. Having a mature, adult conversation about how everything worked out for the best. Gross. I prefer our immature, chaotic conversations about whose turn it is to do the dishes. It's your turn, by the way. It's always my turn. That's what I get for falling in love with someone who owns a label maker. Fern was about to respond when the gallery lights suddenly flickered and went out. For a moment, the room was plunged into darkness and confused silence. Then someone found the emergency lighting, and the gallery was bathed in a soft amber glow that made all of Divine's photographs look even more magical. Ladies and gentlemen, announced the gallery owner, we seem to be having a small electrical issue, but please don't let that stop you from enjoying the exhibit. Sometimes the best art is seen in unexpected light. The crowd murmured agreement and continued circulating, and Divine immediately started taking pictures of the emergency lit opening. Are you seriously photographing our own gallery opening's disaster? Fern asked. It's not a disaster, Divine said, snapping away. It's perfect. Look around. Everyone's still here, still enjoying themselves, still connecting with the art. The lighting is actually better this way. More intimate. Fern looked around the amber-lit room, at the people clustered around the photographs, at Tommy and Sarah holding hands while examining the wedding triptych, at great-grandmother Agatha regaling a group of art critics with stories about her matchmaking success. You're right, she said. It is perfect. Of course I'm right. I'm an expert on beautiful disasters, remember? Divine lowered her camera and pulled Fern close. Dance with me, she said. There's no music. There's always music if you listen hard enough. And somehow, in the amber light of the emergency lighting, with the soft hum of conversation around them and the scent of wine and success in the air, Fern could hear it. The music of a love story that had started with chaos and bloomed into something beautiful. They swayed together in the middle of the gallery, surrounded by photographs of other people's beautiful disasters, creating their own perfect moment in the middle of an imperfect night. Hey, Fern, Divine whispered. I'm glad you said no the first time I asked you out. Really? Why? Because this, us, now, here, this is worth waiting for. This is worth all the chaos and confusion and heartbreak it took to get here. Even Tommy? Especially Tommy. He brought us together, even if that wasn't the plan. And the divorce? Necessary plot development. And the 6 months of noble suffering? Character building. Fern laughed. You're ridiculous. I'm yours. Yes, you are. Forever? Forever. The lights flickered back on just then, flooding the gallery with bright normal illumination. The crowd cheered, and Divine immediately started photographing their reactions. But Fern barely noticed any of it, because she was looking at Divine, really looking at her, and realizing that this was it. This was her person. This chaotic, brilliant, hot sauce-loving, disaster-documenting, beautiful person who saw magic in emergencies and found love in the most impossible circumstances. This was her happy ending. Except it wasn't an ending at all. It was just the beginning. But of course, this isn't actually a story about happy endings, is it? This is a story about love that comes at the wrong time, in the wrong way, with the wrong people watching. This is a story about choices that seem right but feel wrong, and feelings that seem wrong but feel right. Because the truth is, fairy tales don't happen in real life. People don't just get to fall in love and live happily ever after without consequences. Real life is messier than that. Real life has complications that don't resolve neatly, pain that doesn't just disappear because you finally get what you want, and questions that don't have satisfying answers. So here's what really happened. 3 days after the gallery opening, Tommy called Fern. I saw the photos from your opening. he said. You and Divine looked happy. We are happy, Fern said carefully. I hope that's okay. It's not okay, Tommy said quietly. It's not okay at all. Fern's heart sank. Tommy, it's not okay because you both deserve better than what I put you through. You deserve to be together from the beginning, and I was too selfish to see it. You weren't selfish. You were trying to make the best of an impossible situation. No, I was trying to keep something that was never really mine. Divine was never really my wife. Fern, she was always yours. I just got in the way for a while. Tommy paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. I loved her, you know, I really did. Maybe not the way she deserved, but I loved her. And losing her, it broke something in me that I don't think is ever going to heal completely. Tommy, I know she's happy with you. I can see it in the pictures, in the way she talks about you when great-grandmother Agatha gives me updates. She's happier with you than she ever was with me, but that doesn't make it hurt less. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are, and I know you never meant for any of this to happen. But here's the thing, Fern. Sorry doesn't fix broken hearts. Sorry doesn't give me back the year I spent loving someone who was in love with someone else. Sorry doesn't make the divorce any less real, or the failure any less painful. Fern was crying now, silent tears that she tried to keep out of her voice. What can I do? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. That's what makes this so fucking awful. There's no villain here. There's no one to blame. Just three people who fell in love with the wrong people at the wrong time, and one of us got left behind. You won't be left behind forever. You'll find someone. Don't, Tommy said sharply. Don't tell me I'll find someone else. Don't tell me this will all work out for the best. Don't try to make this okay, because it's not okay. It's never going to be okay. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. I have to go, Tommy said finally. I wanted you to know. I wanted you to know that your happiness costs something. It costs me. And I need you to live with that, because I have to live with it every day. He hung up before Fern could respond. That night, Fern told Divine about the call. They sat in their messy, beautiful apartment, surrounded by the evidence of their life together. And Fern watched Divine's face crumple as she absorbed Tommy's pain. Maybe we shouldn't have, Divine started, then stopped. Shouldn't have what? Shouldn't have gotten together. Shouldn't have pursued this when we knew it would hurt him. Do you really believe that? Divine was quiet for a long time. No, she said finally. I can't make myself believe that. I love you too much, and I'm too selfish to wish we hadn't found each other. But I also can't pretend that our love story doesn't have casualties. Tommy will be okay eventually. Will he? How do you know? Fern didn't know. She couldn't know. That was the terrible truth of it. They'd chosen their own happiness over Tommy's, and they'd never know if that choice was ultimately worth the cost. 6 months later, great-grandmother Agatha died peacefully in her sleep. At the funeral, Fern and Divine sat with Tommy and Sarah, all of them crying for the woman who had orchestrated the most beautiful disaster any of them had ever lived through. After the service, Tommy approached them in the parking lot. She would have been so proud, he said, gesturing to Fern and Divine holding hands. She always said her greatest success was getting you two together. Tommy, Divine started. It's okay, he said. I'm not here to make this about me. I'm here because I loved her too, and I wanted to pay my respects. He looked older, Fern noticed. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, a weariness in his posture that spoke of pain that had settled in and made itself at home. How are you? Fern asked. Tommy smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm surviving. Sarah's been patient with me, more patient than I deserve, but I'm still working through things. It takes time, Divine said softly. Does it? Tommy asked. Because it's been over a year, and I still think about what we could have been every single day. I still wonder if I could have tried harder, loved better, been someone you could have fallen in love with. Tommy, don't do that to yourself, Fern said. Love isn't about trying harder or being better. Sometimes it just isn't meant to be. Easy to say when you got what you wanted. The words hung in the air like a slap. Fern felt Divine's hand tighten in hers, felt the familiar guilt rise in her throat. You're right, Fern said. It is easy for me to say, and I'm sorry for that. Tommy nodded, looked like he might say something else, then just walked away. That night, lying in bed next to Divine. Fern stared at the ceiling and wondered if happiness was supposed to feel this heavy. "Do you think we're bad people?" she whispered into the darkness. "What do you mean?" "I mean, are we bad people for choosing each other when we knew it would hurt Tommy?" Divine was quiet for so long that Fern thought she'd fallen asleep. Then, "I think we're human people who made human choices. I think we chose love over safety, authenticity over convenience. I think we broke some hearts in the process, including our own. Do you regret it?" Another long pause. "I regret that people got hurt. I regret that there wasn't a way for everyone to be happy. I regret that love is so fucking complicated and messy and painful." "But do you regret us?" "No," Divine whispered. "God help me, but no, I don't regret us." And that was it. That was their truth. They were happy, deeply and genuinely happy, but their happiness was built on someone else's heartbreak. They were living their love story, but someone else was living the aftermath of their choices. There was no neat resolution to this. No moment when Tommy found peace and forgave them and everyone lived happily ever after. No clear moral to the story about whether following your heart is always the right choice. There was just this. Two women who loved each other desperately, imperfectly, and at great cost. Two women who woke up every day choosing each other while carrying the weight of what that choice had cost someone else. Some people would call them selfish. Some people would call them brave. Some people would say they should have stayed apart, honored the marriage, sacrificed their feelings for the greater good. But those people weren't living their lives. Those people weren't lying awake at night wondering if they were making the right choices, weren't navigating the impossible space between personal happiness and moral obligation. Those people had the luxury of judging from the outside, of seeing clear answers where there were only complicated questions. In the end, Fern and Divine's love story wasn't a fairy tale. It was just life, beautiful and terrible and morally ambiguous and absolutely, completely real. They loved each other. Tommy was still broken. Great-grandmother Agatha was gone. The world kept turning. And somewhere in Seattle, a kind man was trying to rebuild his heart, while his girlfriend made him laugh at reality TV shows and sneezed every time they passed a pet store. Some stories don't have satisfying endings. Some loves cost more than they should. Some choices haunt you even when they're the only choices you could have made. But love, real, complicated, devastating love, isn't about having a story that makes everyone comfortable. It's about having a story that's yours, even when it's messy, even when it hurts, even when other people think you should have chosen differently. Fern and Divine chose each other. Every day they kept choosing each other, and every day they lived with the consequences of that choice. It wasn't a happy ending. It wasn't an unhappy ending. It was just an ending. And sometimes that's the most honest thing a love story can be.